To see you guys. Hey, man, it's so good to be with you. I know you guys don't get to hear from me a lot, but my name is Brad. I'm one of the pastors around here. Always so honored to share with you guys and take you into something. Like Steph said, this is week number 5 of this series, Storyteller. We've been looking at the fact that Jesus was a master storyteller, and he used stories all the time to convey some of the truths that he had for people. And I want to do something that I think might throw you off a little bit, but I'm hoping you can hang with me. I want to take us into a story to start us off that's not in the Bible, but it's going to sound like it's in the Bible, okay? Now, these stories that we've been studying are called, there's a specific word for that. You guys are great. Wow, you remember parables, like they're called parables. Now, some of you may be a little like me in the fact that you may be new to church. I'm not new to church right now, but I was when I was in high school, okay? So when I was in high school, I had never really been to church a whole lot. I didn't know anything about the Bible. I didn't come from a Christian family, and so if I was in your shoes and I was in high school, I would have no idea what that word means. Like, what is a parable? What even is that word, right? So if you're new to Impact or you're new to church, let me just tell you, a parable's simple. It's a certain type of story. It's a fictional story, so not real, that conveys like a real-life truth. That's all a parable is. It's just a fictional story, and teachers, especially back in like centuries ago in history, would use these parables to like teach people and help them understand some things. So I'm going to try one on you, okay? Okay, I'm going to try a parable on you. It's actually got some stuff I'm going to bring out here. It's going to sound like it's in the Bible, but it is not from the Bible, okay? It's got real characters in it. It's got Jesus in it and some of the disciples. I heard this parable from another pastor, and it kind of stuck with me, so I'm just going to tell you this parable. It is a parable. It's just not in the Bible. Okay. It's the parable of the disciples and the stones. Are you ready? Okay. So, like I said, it's going to sound like it's in the Bible, but it's not. So one day, Jesus was taking his disciples on a long journey, something he did a lot, actually. He would take them to different places all over. And as you know, if you know anything about Jesus, the destination for these journeys was not always the point. A lot of times it was the lessons that he would teach them along the way. And this journey was no different. And so one morning during this journey, Jesus said something that surprised his disciples. He came to them in the morning before they set off for that day, and he simply said, "Carry a stone for me." So his disciples thought about it, and honestly, they weren't surprised because Jesus was known to do stuff like this. Like, he would test you. He would tell you to do things that like didn't make sense. Like, Jesus, there's 5,000 people here and they're hungry, and he would say, "You feed them." You know, Jesus would do this. He would test you. And so the disciples were like, "Okay, I'll carry a stone for you." So the disciples, obeyed that morning. They went around and they found a stone to carry. Now, one of the disciples named Peter was an out-of-the-box thinker. Like, he didn't just, he thought differently. Do you have people like that in your life that they're just different? Peter was just different. So Peter heard Jesus say, "Carry a stone for me." And you know what his first thought was? His first thought was, Jesus never said how big the stone had to be. So you know what Peter did? Peter went and he found like the smallest stone he could find. And he actually even just like tucked it in his pocket. And he carried his stone for Jesus, right? He's doing what Jesus said. So they go about their day. It's a long journey. It's a long day. They come to that evening and they are tired and they are hungry. And so they finally stop their journey for the day, and they're tired, they're hungry. And as they stop, as they start to rest, Jesus does a miracle. He turns all their stones into bread. And he says, "This is your dinner for tonight." Now, Peter was kind of sad because Peter didn't make a good choice with his stone. He reached into his pocket, and his former stone that is now bread, he pulled it out, and that was his dinner for that night. So Peter went to bed hungry. Peter was a little hangry, like he was not feeling very good about himself. Not a good day for him. So anyway, the next day comes along. They wake up the next morning, and you know what Jesus says the next morning? Jesus goes to his disciples. They're about ready to set off, and he says, "Carry a stone for me." Now, Peter knows exactly what to do, right? Peter looks around, trying to find the perfect stone for the day, and you know what he finds? He finds the biggest stone he could possibly pick up. Like, he just takes the most massive stone. Can you hold on to this for me, somebody? Oh, no, you don't want to do that. Tanner Burns and I were actually carrying this. This is from my landscaping. I'm not in the parable anymore. And we think this is probably like 90 pounds. Okay, I'm going to set this down. Whew. Peter picks up a huge stone and he says, I'm gonna carry this stone today. He picks up his stone, carries it all day, man, like just lugging this thing around. He's in beast mode, you know what I'm saying? Like he is flexing. Have you guys ever seen Peter from The Chosen? Is he not the most ripped disciple? Anyway, all right. So Peter's carrying his stone, huge stone this time. He gets to the end of the day, tired, hungry, excited though. And at the end of this day, they come up to a house. Jesus leads them to a house. And Jesus stops them. And he says, hey, you can actually just toss your stones like over to the side because the family that lives in this home has prepared dinner for all of us. Come on in and have dinner today. All the disciples toss their stones. They go in to have dinner, but Peter kind of chills. He hangs back. Peter's confused. And he's a little bit frustrated. Like he just carried this stone, as ripped as he is, all day. Peter finally decides to head in, and Jesus stops him. And he looks at him, and he just says, who are you carrying the stone for? Now, I want you to think about that. Again, that's not in the Bible. I promise we're going to go into the Bible here in a second. But you hear a parable like that, and I hope, number one, I hope it kind of expands your view of what a parable is, the power of a parable. But even more than that, number two, I hope even already God's moving in some way in this room. I believe he is. And maybe you can see yourself in that parable too. The parable of the disciples and the stones. Like, I don't know about you, but there's a problem that I have in my life. I'm a little bit older than you guys, but I've had it like all my life, ever since I can remember. And especially now that I'm a Christian, especially now that I'm a believer in Jesus, it like surprises me how much this is still a problem for me. Like even in this non-biblical parable, it's kind of amazing that you can have someone who loves Jesus so much, like Peter, close to Jesus, been following Jesus, and yet his focus is almost immediately in the wrong place. And I think that is me so often. Like I'm a pastor, and it's like so quick that my focus just goes off. I didn't even try. I didn't intend for my focus to get off on whatever it is I'm doing in my life, right? But it's like there's something in me, guys, that constantly, I'm just gonna say it in a really blunt way. There's something in me that is constantly thinking of myself. All the time. It's like there's this computer program in me, and it's constantly calculating, what's the least I can do in this situation, you know? Like, what's best for me in this? I know what I've got to do, but how can I do it in a way that's best for me? Or situations where my first thought is, how can I get the most for me out of this? Like, what's in this for me? And my guess is that in some way you relate to that too. I know it's a difficult thing for me to bring up, but I'm pretty confident that every single one of us has this problem in our lives. Like that there's a part of all of us that's just constantly thinking this way, constantly thinking of ourselves, and even in our spiritual lives, like regularly off track. I mean, you guys are high school students, and maybe the place where this is, one of the places where this is the most obvious is when you start thinking about your future in college and career and your life down the road. Like maybe some of you, you're a freshman, you're a sophomore, you're not thinking a lot about that, but others of you are thinking a lot about that. And like, what's the message that you hear? Like, get a job where you can do the least amount of work and make the most money, yeah? Or get a job, find a career where you can take your best gift and turn it into the most happiness. and the most money that you can get. I mean, this was me when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I was really only good at one class, and I know this is gonna make me seem like a nerd, but I was really good at math. Like, I was just good at it. I don't know why. I didn't choose to be. I was just good at math. And so coming out of high school, my plan was to go be an engineer. I thought that's the way I can take what I'm best at and turn it into the most money, right? Like, that's just, it's wise, right? But the reality was that the only thing that I wanted was more for me. And the Bible has a word for this. It may not be the word you're thinking of. Maybe the word that you're thinking of is like selfish, but I think it's more than that. Like, there's something in me that leads me to be selfish at times. There's something in me that leads me to think what's best for me and what's in it for me. And the word the Bible uses to describe that part of me and you is the word pride. And I want to tell you what I think pride is. Pride is the part of us that wants to put ourselves first. And I want you to know something. Jesus is constantly like talking about this. This part of us that wants to put ourselves first, this part that's in all of us, because he never created us to live that way. And the more we have pride in us, the less we are who he meant us to be. The more we have pride in us, the less we're able to have him and all that he desires for us as a part of our lives. And look, this is hard for me to say, but I know you've got pride in you. I know you do. You're human. And I want you to admit to yourself that that pride is at least trying with all its might to creep into every area of your life. It's trying to take your view of your family and turn it to say, what's in it for me? What are they doing for me? How are they treating me? It's trying to take your dating relationships and turn it into what's in it for me, and do they like me, and are they staying with me, and how are they treating me? It's trying to take your sport and turn it into how much for me and how much more for me, and look at me like it's there. And Jesus is saying, who are you carrying the stone for? And my honest answer is that all along it's been for me. Now, I want you to go to Luke chapter 18, if you've got your Bible. Or you can flip your notes over because the passage is right there on the back of your notes. It'll also be up on the screen because I want to look at a parable that Jesus gave us. Luke chapter 18, starting verse 9. It says this. It says, to some, and that's actually the key word, to some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. Now let me stop there. Again, I want to be real sensitive to some of you because you're new to this. You're new to church. You got invited by a friend. You haven't been around this stuff. Okay, you hear the word Pharisee and you're like, what is that? What? A Pharisee? A Pharisee was a title. And it was the title of some of the religious elite people of Jesus' day. If you were a Pharisee, you were like the best pastor the world has, like the nation has seen. Like, you're at the top of the spiritual ladder. Like, you're a teacher, you're a spiritual leader, you're on a council probably making big decisions about things. Like, you're at the top. Pharisees were like the most highly regarded religious people of the time. And they were the most devoted to God, it seemed. Nobody did more for God than a Pharisee. A tax collector also goes up to the temple to pray. What's the deal with that? What's a tax collector? Well, a tax collector was a Jewish person, just like a Pharisee was a Jewish person. Jesus was a Jewish person. But this tax collector would have taken a job with the Roman Empire, which was like the enemy. They take a job with the Romans, and their job is to take money from the Jewish people, taxes, and channel that money into Rome. But more than that, their job and their mission was to get as much money out of their fellow Jews as they could so that they could become rich too. They were people who would extort their neighbors, their friends. They were people who betrayed their country. So a tax collector was like the most despised Jewish person in the area, the most looked down upon. So it's like Jesus says that a guy who's the most highly regarded and a guy who is the least highly regarded both go to the temple to pray. The guy who's the most devoted to God and maybe the guy who is the least devoted to God, they both go to the temple to pray. And let me continue with the parable. Verse 11. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast, which means to not eat. I fast twice a week, and I give a tenth, 1 out of every 10 of what I get. I give that back to you. But, verse 13, the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast, which is like a sign of remorse. And he said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And then Jesus says in verse 14, I tell you that this man, the tax collector, rather than the Pharisee, went home justified before God. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted. Jesus tells, I think, a startling story. It's as if he says, hey, Impact, do you know the person among you that appears to be the most in love with me, the most passionate for me, the most like into spiritual things, and maybe the person among you that seems to know the least, care the least, does the least, do you know that they might actually not be where you think they are spiritually? That person who seems to be the highest, that person has a problem. That Pharisee's problem was that he was full of pride, full of that part of him that is constantly thinking of himself, full of that part of him that constantly wants to put himself first. And look what Jesus says about the Pharisee. Jesus says, you can see this. He says, first of all, that Pharisee thanks God that he's not like other people. He is focused on how he compares to others, how he measures up. And be honest with yourself. How often is that you? Like, how often do you think of yourself in terms of how you compare to other people? Sometimes better, sometimes worse. Then that Pharisee goes, especially that I'm not like this tax collector. He's not only falling into a comparison trap, but he's putting others down. Like, I'm convinced that when someone in this world puts another person down, the thing they're trying to do, the one thing they're trying to do is to elevate themselves. They're trying to make themselves feel better. They're trying to make themselves feel more. They're trying to put themselves first. And that's exactly what this Pharisee's doing. And then the Pharisee says, I fast twice a week. I give a tenth of all I have. He says, God, look at how much I'm doing. Look at how heavy my rock is. God, look. Look at me. Look at all that I am. And Jesus says to his disciples, to all who are listening, especially to some who look down on others, he said, that man is nowhere close to the living God. That man is full of pride. And so I ask you, as hard as it is for me to ask you some of this stuff, like, how is this you? Maybe God loves you enough to say, just look at yourself, look at your heart. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of where. Like, where in your life are you so focused on you? Where in your life is God saying you were never meant to live that way? Like, let me ask you, are you overly driven to achieve? Are you honestly exhausted? Like, you don't sleep enough? And when you do try to sleep, you toss and turn? You've got so much on your mind. And maybe if people could see into your everyday life, the honest truth is your spiritual life kind of looks like this, because it feels like you've got so much else to do. Like, is that you? Are you overly concerned about your future? Like, if you don't get it right, then you're gonna miss out on all the happiness you long for. Are you freaking out about your next step? Are you overly concerned about what other people think of you? Do you find yourself wondering, processing, fantasizing about what do they think of me? Are you overly critical of yourself? Like, do you find yourself not liking what you see when you look in the mirror? Do you find yourself being really hard on you when you don't measure up? You know, out of all of these, that last one is probably the most me when I was in high school, especially before I met Jesus. Like, when I thought of me, I hated who I was. I didn't like anything about me. I remember a friend invited me to youth group early on, and I didn't really know Jesus that well. I was a sophomore in high school, and I remember the youth pastor, during his message, I couldn't tell you what it was about, he asked us to draw a picture of ourselves on our notes handout. And so I drew a picture of like a stick figure. And I remember just tuning out the rest of the message because I took my pen and I just punched holes. The whole message just punched holes in that picture that I drew of myself. And you know what I'm doing when I hate myself? I'm actually putting my focus on myself. It's actually another way that I put myself first. It's another way that I'm trying to hold myself up as what actually I think matters most. And I just want to tell you, your Father in heaven has a different life for you. And his invitation to you is so simple. He just says, humble yourself. Like, what would it look like for you to live a genuine, beautiful, consistent humility out in your everyday life? If pride is the part of us that wants to put ourselves first, then I want you to know this about humility. Humility is a willingness to put ourselves second. That's all it is. Humility is the willingness to set ourselves aside, to let ourselves fall into the background at times. You know, humility sometimes it is thinking less of ourselves at times. It says in Romans chapter 12, verse 3, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought. Let's put that up there. Humility sometimes is like that. It's sometimes just lowering yourself, bringing yourself down. Do you know why the tax collector ends up close to God? It's just because he acknowledged his faults. He just admitted that he was in the wrong. He just was willing to lower himself. And all of a sudden, God says, that's who I made you to be. Someone who isn't constantly trying to puff yourself up. Sometimes we go through life and we hit something really hard. And do you know what our question to God is? Like, God, this is so hard. Why me? Like, God, what did I do to have to go through this? And what if we just stopped? And look, I know there's more I should probably say in response to this, but what if we just stopped and said, why not me? Like, why do I deserve it any better than anyone else? Maybe some of us, God's just saying humility sometimes is thinking less of yourself, but you know what humility always is? Humility is always thinking of ourselves less. Humility is Philippians 2, verses 3 through 4, which says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Like, as simple as it is, some of you don't need to think less of yourself. You already think too little of yourself. Jesus is actually just saying, just think of yourself less. Like, what if you went through your day and you were not on your own mind so much? What if all the things you're concerned about for you were not so concerning to you? What if you just let you move into the background and you actually begin to live your life a whole different way? Like, do you know what might change in your life? I'm going to put a few things up here. What I think this might look like is like you might start viewing your talents as a gift to others. Think about that. Like, whatever you're good at, what if you showed up at that thing and you said, this isn't even for me? Like I am good at this. I'm good at math, or I'm good at this sport, or I'm good at this music, or I'm good at this subject. And all that talent is something I don't deserve, and I'm not even gonna make it about me. Like if you're an athlete, your coach is dying to get your team to see that. Like for you to go onto your court, your field, or wherever you play and just to say, this isn't about me. And I couldn't even succeed without the people around me. Like that's humility, viewing my talents as a gift to someone else. Let me give you another one. When you just think of yourself less, I think you might find that humility is not being good at something and being okay with that. Like you might actually find yourself going, you know what, I'm not good at that, and I'm okay with that. It says in 1 Corinthians 1, God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. He chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. Like think about that, the things that are not, for you to say, I'm not good at that, or I'm not as good as this person. And that's okay. Like I'm okay. Because it's not about me. I'm just gonna let myself move to the background. Let me give you another one. This one's real specific. Sorry if this, is awkward. But humility might be you dating someone and asking God to lead them to the person that's best for them, even if it's not you. Like think about that. I know some of you are single, you're not dating, but maybe you'll get there someday, okay? What if you legitimately prayed, God, would you lead him to the person that's best for them, even if it's not me? And if you can't pray that, do you know what you're doing in that dating relationship? You're not actually loving them. You're just using them to love yourself. And maybe we need to see that humility and love are more deeply connected than we ever realized. If we begin to just think of ourselves less, we also might find that we can admit that we're wrong. Like you can go to your mom or your dad or your friend or your teacher or your coach and you can just admit that you're wrong. You might find that God's going to call you to confess your sin to a trusted believer. And I believe you might find God calling you to just focus on loving others instead of being concerned about what they think about you. To just focus on loving others instead of what they think about you. And I just want you to ask with me just for a minute, what could your life look like if you lived with a consistent, beautiful, genuine humility? If you took that part of you, that part of me, that is constantly thinking about ourselves, and you let it fade into the background, I believe you'll find that the living God, no matter how new you are to church, no matter how far you feel spiritually, that the living God is right next to you, that he's gonna walk right with you today, right now, that you don't have to pick up a boulder, it's not about how much you do, how long you've done it, how much knowledge you have, about how great you are. God doesn't want any of that from you. God, in fact, just says, why don't you set that down? And he might look you in the eye and say, who are you carrying the stone for? And you find the best way to live your life is if you're going to carry it for him, not you. Whatever that hardship is, whatever that challenge. You remember the song we sang a few minutes ago? I'm going to close with these words. The whole of my heart, the best of my soul, each phase of my life, each breath in my lungs, consider it yours, Lord. Consider it yours, Lord. The failure I hide, the victories I don't, the battles I fight, each crown that I hoard, consider it yours, Lord. Consider it yours, Lord. All the glory forever, the grave that you won, the praise of the heavens, the kingdom to come. Oh, consider it yours, Lord. Consider it yours. And so, Father in heaven, I pray over this group of high schoolers that they would leave this space, that they would go into their regular life, and that they would seek you to give them a heart that is humble, a heart that says, God, it's yours, not mine. A heart that hears you say, who are you carrying this for? A heart that's willing to set it down, to move into the background and let you fill their life, let you move to the front and let you lead the way. And God, I believe that there are miracles to come. There are lives to be changed and your kingdom will arrive through a person like that. It's in Jesus' name I pray that you would do these things. Amen.